a Jar, a condiment company based in Brooklyn, New York. I also have a chili pepper farm in upstate New York, and I'm a certified pepper nerd.
Hey everyone, I'm Laena McCarthy and I'm the CEO and founder of Anarchy in a Jar. We have a condiment and hot sauce company that I've had for 13 years now in Brooklyn, New York, and I love teaching this class. Pickles are one of my favorite foods. So I'm super excited to make pickles with you today. We're going to make some incredible pickled peppers. So excited. So let's get started. Let's do this. Pickle class. We are going to do a class that rhymes with tickle and feels the same way when you eat them. Pickles. Pickles are one of my favorite foods. And what I love about this class is we're going to do one version today, the kind you got in your kit. So we're going to do the kit, but you can actually adapt it and do so many more varieties on your own. And you're going to find out today that it's actually pretty easy. So let's get started. So I want everyone to go. The first thing you need to do is grab your equipment and get ready. So I'm going to do a little tour of the equipment, and then you can always put me on pause and go get your stuff and get ready. So to start with, you're going to need some sort of knife to chop up your ingredients. You're going to need your kit. So your whole kit, grab it, put it out just like it is right here. And you're going to need a measuring cup of some kind. So we're going to add a little water to our brine. You guys got a jar of vinegar. Well, we're going to add a little more brine with it, a little more water to have our brine mix. And then you're going to need some sort of pot to cook with. So you can use one pot, you can use two. I find it a little easier to use two. So I like using one small stock pot like this one for warming up my brine. That's going to be step one that we do in 2 seconds. And then for the third part, so we're going to prep our ingredients, fill our jar. And then the last thing we're going to do is we're actually going to do like a real canning 101. Like we're going to water bath can our pickles, which is such a cool technique. You can use it for so many different things, sauces, jams, etc. So now you're going to learn this amazing skill if you don't know it already, all about water bath canning. So for our water bath canning, we're going to need some sort of pot that fits our jar. So you want to find a pot in your cupboard. It's okay if it's a bigger one. I love these like nice narrow pots are so perfect, and they come with this super cool you can use it as a steamer. They're just really fun. You can find them like in cooking stores or on Amazon, and they're really nice because they're tall. So what you're going to need for your pot for our final water bath canning, you're going to need something where the jar can fit inside. So look at the ratio right here. Look how my jar will totally fit inside and be completely covered in water. That is a key to water bath canning safety. So water bath canning 101, that's super essential. So go and grab all your equipment, grab your pieces, your pots, and then come back and join me here and we will get going. We're going to do all our fun pickle magic today. So I'm excited. Let's do it. Okay, so we're ready. We've got all our equipment. We're ready to go. We got our pots. We've got our board. So let's do a little tour of all the fun stuff we have here, and then we'll start chopping and prepping and making our brine. So we have today some beautiful things to pickle. So anytime you're going to pickle, you need things to pickle. What can you pickle? You can pickle almost anything. So almost any fruit and vegetable. If you're going to do things like meats and fish, dairy, those things require what's called a special pressure canner. We're not going to cover that today. So that's like a canning grad school level. And so we're not going to do that today, but absolutely follow along. I do have videos on how to do more complicated canning techniques like that. For today, though, in this kit, we're doing veg, which is your classic kind of pickle. And instead of picking cucumbers, right? Cucumbers are like what we think of so commonly as pickles. But you can really pickle a variety of vegetables. One of my favorite things to pickle are peppers. So whether it's chili peppers or sweet, today you have these lovely little sweet peppers. They are so tasty, and their flavor is wonderful, and pickling them just adds a little more sourness, a little more flavor, and allows them to last for a long time in your fridge. And they're a wonderful condiment to put on rice dishes, to put on tortillas and tacos, to put even on pasta. So there's so many different ways you can pair your pickled peppers, which is why I love them so much. They just add a little of that peppery flavor to whatever you're cooking with. The other things we have today, we've got some garlic cloves. So garlic cloves, garlic is just a classic flavor in pickles, gives it umami, mouthfeel flavor. Always really nice to add. And then we have this pretty little baby here. This is a shallot. Shallots are kind of a mix between onions and garlic. They're like a more robust, earthy onion flavor. And they're really, really sweet as well. Really sweet and delicious. And they're a wonderful ingredient to also use on things like sandwiches. Shallots are one of those things you find, pickled shallots, in a lot of like fancy recipe books, or you'll find them in fancy restaurants as like a little addition to your food. And that's because by adding a little of that sourness of the pickle flavor, that vinegar, actually helps cut some of the richness of things like meats or heavy foods. And that's why they pair so well with so many things like Southern cuisine, or any kind of rich barbecued meats. Shallots and pickled veggies in general are just a wonderful balance. That acid and that vinegar that you have in there, a wonderful balance to anything that you might be consuming. So those are our fresh ingredients today. Anytime you make pickles, what else do you need? You need salt. So salt is actually a natural preservative. So we're using salt today in our pickles. There's 2 teaspoons in this little bag. There's also some sugar. The sugar here is optional. So you don't need to add sugar to pickles. It's not essential for safety. It's really just about flavor. So if you'd like your pickles to be a little sweeter, you can add sugar, and you can even add more. So anyone here today wants to make more like bread and butter style pickles, then absolutely you can totally do that. And that's a really fun way to play around with that pickle flavor. So making it a little sweeter, really, really fun. So we have 1 teaspoon. These are each a half a teaspoon of sugar here today. You can add another like teaspoon or 2 if you want them sweeter. That's going to be a fun choose your own adventure option when we get to that stage. And then there's also some spices. So anytime you make pickles, there's whole spices in there. The whole spices help infuse those pickles, those vegetables with flavor. And it kind of adds to that flavor, right? Whole spices are ideal. You don't want to use powdered spices. The powder kind of gets weird, right? And clings to them. And you don't want like weird chalky pickles. So whole spices are ideal. Today we have a wonderful mix. We've got some green peppercorns. You'll see those little green guys in there, wrinkly green guys. Green peppercorns are an even more robust pepper flavor, similar to black. You could use black as well for your own pickling needs. Green is just kind of a fun flavor that I throw in there for you guys. There's some tiny little beige yellowish seeds in there. Those are mustard seeds, a wonderful flavor. Yellow mustard seeds adds a little bit of that wasabi taste to your pickles, but very subtle, very yummy. There's also some slightly larger beige seeds in there, coriander. Coriander is actually the seed of the cilantro plant, used a lot in South Asian cooking, but really all over the world. In fact, used classically in pickles, especially even Northern European pickles. We've also gotten here some cloves. Cloves are they kind of add a little bit of sweetness, a little bit of that, what I think of as a more warm flavor to your pickles. They work really well with peppers. So I love the balance of that flavor of clove with our sweet peppers. Super, super delicious. So that's why they're in that mix today. When you make pickles on your own, you can use different spices. So if you have a favorite spice, you love cardamom or you love Szechuan peppercorns, throw those in there. That's totally a way in which you can really absolutely adapt this recipe to your own needs and own taste buds. Add some other fun things in there. And there's so many different options. You can find a lot of different fun pickle recipes on my blog if you want inspiration for going your own route with that. So anarchyinajar.com, you'll find a lot of fun different flavors in there. So let's jump in and start the process. Are you ready? Prepared? Okay, we've got our equipment, everything. So the first thing you want to do is make your brine. I'm going to put my little pot to the side here, let him chill out. And then we want to start making our brine. So our brine is going to be the entire jar that you have of apple cider vinegar, raw organic apple cider vinegar, super tasty, good for you, probiotic. I love that vinegar, apple cider vinegar is one of those magic things that both old grandmas and hip LA wellness girls both agree is good for you. So thumbs up. And a little water. So you do the same ratio of water in there. You're gonna have a little extra brine. And I always make a little bit extra, a little bit more than your pot, just in case some cooks off or you forget it and it steams out. The other thing, so the last things that go into our brine are salt. Open up your pack, boop, whole thing goes in there. All that salt, tippy tip, tappy tap, get it all out of there. Then you're gonna put your sugar in there. I'm gonna take both of my packs and throw them in there. Like I said, sugar is optional. If you're someone who cannot consume sugar or doesn't like sugar, don't put it in there. Totally option. Okay, now we're gonna go warm our brine. You're gonna take your pot, put it on the stove, and warm it up for about 2 minutes, just till you see maybe a little bit of heat coming off the surface and it's ready to go. All right, our brine is nice and warm. You just want to make sure that the ingredients in there are nice and dissolved, your salt and your sugar. So we're moving on to step number 2, which is prepping up our ingredients. So chopping up our peppers, our shallot, and stuffing our jars full of them so that we are ready to have some yummy, yummy pickles. So you're gonna take your jar. So you want to take the lid off, have it right here, and then we're just gonna start kind of filling it as we go along. You want to take your whole packet of seeds and dump it right in there. If for some reason you really don't like any of the flavors, so if you hate the flavor of clove, you can pull those out and not include those in there. That's totally up to you in this process. So first, I'm going to take my garlic cloves and stuff them in there. So if you guys don't know this already, the best way to take the skins off of garlic, I somehow did not learn this. As a child and a teenager in an Italian family, I would sit there with little bloody fingers, peeling off the garlic for hours on end. But now I know this trick, which is that you take the flat of a knife or your fist and you get all your aggression out. So you just give it a nice whack, and that will cause the skin to kind of just pop right off. So you'll see right now, the skin much easier to pull off. This garlic is so nice and fresh. The skin is really, really right on there, which is awesome. It's a great sign. And then you're just going to take any little pieces of skin and then put the whole clove in there. If you want your peppers to be more garlicky, like you want little pieces of garlic in there that will come off when you pull your pickles out, you can totally chop them up. That's absolutely an option here. And in fact, in many of these classes, people like to some of them are like, I love garlic. I want to chop it up. That's my thing. So absolutely up to you. It's fine if your garlic clove does this, like it kind of just broke in half. You just want to put all those little pieces into the jar. Okay, next. Up to you. I'm going to start by cutting up my shallot and leave my peppers for last. So with your shallot, you just want to kind of chop those 2 parts of it. So make sure you get all of that outer skin off, right? That little protective skin that keeps our shallot nice and safe when it's in the ground. You want to just pull that right off. All right, peeling off that little outer membrane. You can just see that outer membrane, we don't need that, right? That outer skin, we want that juicy, soft stuff on the inside. So this looks perfect now. You want to then take your shallot. I like to cut it in half and then cut it up in like little half moon shapes. But of course, you can do whatever you want. Think about when you're thinking about the shapes you want, think about how you want to eat it. So if you want to put these on sandwiches, you want it minced, you could totally make it minced. In fact, anytime you're making pickles, you can make them more like a relish, where you actually mince stuff instead of cutting it up in circles or in larger pieces like we're doing today. And of course, be careful of your fingers as you go along. So I like to kind of separate some of the shallot out a little bit as it goes in there. But of course, again, up to you how you want to do that. Now I'm going to move on to my peppers. I'm going to cut my peppers up in little rings. But you know what's so cool about these little peppers? They're sweet. They're not spicy. You can include everything except, of course, most of us would want to cut off that little green end because we don't need that in there. Everything else is perfect to include. You can cut them in circles. You can, even if you wanted to, you could leave them whole if like that was more your aesthetic you were going for. Again, really depends on how you want to eat them. But of course, you can also completely mince them in little pieces if you want it to be more like a relish. These are so pretty. One of the things I love about making pickles is really just thinking about like the color, right? It's so pretty. Think about the aesthetic of like making this beautiful little jar. So, anytime if you see some cool, like beautifully colored veggies at the farmer's market, that's a perfect thing to pickle. Or think about, how you want it to be and how it's going to look in that jar. All really great ideas for pickling. Like if you see different colored peppers, you could make them like a beautiful ombre effect in that jar. Again, really up to you. So here's my jar, nicely somewhat full. You can stuff yours more. Some of your peppers are bigger. You can certainly stuff them more than I did here. That's totally up to you and how much you want in that jar. You want them to be nicely packed. And of course, you don't want them too high. So you don't want them over the top of the jar. You want them nicely packed in there. So now you're going to take your brine, your nice pot of brine, and you're just going to pour that whole thing right in there. And you want to pour it right there up to the top. See, I left just a little, what's called head space. You want to leave a little space at the top just for the air to expand out of it. It will mean it seals better. So take your lid anytime you're canning. We're moving into canning next, the canning portion. So you can, you just want to make sure anytime if you buy these jars on your own that they have this what's called a plastisol lined lid. So this white rubber on the inside, the plastisol, actually is what creates your seal. So it's super important anytime you're canning. All right, we're going to put the lid on our jar, and now we're moving into step number 3. Are you ready for it? All right, step number 3. Move out of the way, brine. Now, what is here? It is our pot. And we're going to make sure we put our jar in there. And then it has to be completely covered with water. So this is the most important step, covered with water. I'm going to show you what that looks like. Okay, ready for it? Step number 3. We've got our pot here. And now we just want to cover it with water. I'm going to show you what that looks like. You want it completely covered so that the lid in this little pot is totally covered by the water. So see how my lid is in there, the water is over the top. It's going to be completely sealed. That is so important. Really critical step is that your jar is totally submerged in water. You want it to be over the top of the jar by about 1.5 inches. So, take your thumb and you can measure it, right? So at least to the first joint in there, you want that to be totally covered with water. So now we're going to put it on the stove, put a lid on it, and we're going to bring it to a boil. And then we're going to start our clocks. You're going to start your clock when it comes to a real boil. Like, not that I cheated and it's almost a boil, but I still put my pasta in. This is like a full rolling boil. So there should be bubbles bouncing around in your pot. There should be steam coming out the top. You might even hear your jar going clink, 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 clink inside. All good things, all good signs it's at a full rolling boil. So again, bubbles inside bouncing around, that's a rolling boil. That's when you start your clock. So at that point you go tick, start your timer, and you want to process it in a water bath for 10 minutes. Okay, 10 minutes. So start your timers, 10 minutes, and then we're going to come back here, pull our jars out, and we're going to talk about the magic of our jar sealing. Okay, so 10 minutes at a full rolling boil. Let's do this and start your clocks when it's fully boiling, not now. 10 minutes at a full rolling boil. Let's do this. Okay, everyone, we're back. 10 minutes later. Okay, actually more, because there was those few moments it came to a boil. So we'll say 15 minutes later, and it's looking good. So our pot is really hot here. Don't be careful to not touch it. I've just pulled mine off. You can see it's nice. It's just, I usually let it cool for like 30 seconds so that I'm not sticking my paws into like totally bubbling water. And now your options are multi. So how you pull your jar out of the pot, if you have a cool rack like this, you can just pull it right out. Or of course, if you don't, which is most of us, you can totally use tongs. Tongs are my favorite thing. You can use, of course, something called a jar lifter if you want to be fancy and cool and use those for canning. Those are really handy. You don't need one. So with tongs, just reach in there and yoink it up, and then pull it out, let it sit. Now is the part, this is the Zen part. I'm going to lift my pot, take it away. We've left the canning zone. Okay, now our jar is going to sit here and it's going to cool. And now is when the magic happens, folks. Now is when the magic happens. So over the next probably, 5 to 25 minutes, maybe 30, depending on the temperature in your home, our jar is going to seal. What happens is, see this lid right here? Look how it moves up and down. Do you hear that? That is the sound of a lid that is not sealed yet. It's a hot lid. It is still moving. The seal hasn't happened. The seal only happens when that air has been pushed out of the jar so that the beauty of physics happens, and that by the air pushing out, it creates a seal. And when that happens, you now have an anaerobic environment. You have a safe environment where bad bacteria can't enter there. There's no air spoilage possible. And you have this beautiful sealed jar that's going to last for, like, I say, a year. Usually I encourage people, eat your pickles within 6 months. After 6 months, they just start getting a little softer, and nobody wants a soft pickle. So I always encourage, 6 months in your shelf. But now, once it's sealed, once that seal happens, and let me show you what that looks like. Right behind me, I've got my wonderful little shelf of pickles, and you can see, look how the difference between the lids. Look how this one is all sucked down. That middle center, that button totally stays. You can't move it. This, see how it moves up and down? You can hear it, you can see it. That's the difference between sealed and unsealed. So it's totally possible. Sometimes your jars don't seal. Maybe you didn't boil them long enough. Maybe you cheated with those 10 minutes, or maybe you didn't fully cover it in the water. Those are usually the two reasons your jars won't seal. They're not totally covered by water in their pot, or you didn't process them long enough and they didn't have a time to get hot enough. They need to get super duper hot so that that seal, that magic of the physics only happens when they're hot enough. So I encourage you, give it time. It usually takes, like I said, about 10, maybe 20 minutes for that seal magic to happen. And when it does, you're good. That jar can sit out on your shelf. If it doesn't seal, like if you had a whatever, you messed up, or your jar has a is challenged, then you absolutely can just take this jar and put it in your fridge. They're still good to eat. It just means they're not airtight, so they'll probably go bad a little bit faster in your fridge. So, I usually say a month or two in your fridge is completely fine. Once your pickles start, so once your sealed jar, once you open it, you need to keep it in the fridge. And again, it will last at that point for a month or two. You'll know your pickles aren't super tasty anymore when they're like getting a little soft, right? Or they're seeming like there's a little funk smell to them. Those are never good things. Sometimes they'll go moldy, usually within a vinegar. In vinegar like this, they won't. But of course, anytime you see mold in any food you open in your fridge, you should chuck it out. So especially if it's a canned good, that just means there was too much bacteria in there, right? Creating a less than tasty environment for you to eat. So enjoy your pickles. Go put them on something delicious. You can open these. So great question I often get, how long are they, like, when can you start eating them? I always say pickles taste best if you let them sit for a few days. So let them sit for 5-7 days, let them chill out for a week, and then serve them a week from now, and they will be perfectly tasting. All those spices in there, the flavor will have a little time to absorb into those peppers. But of course you can eat them right away if you really want to. They're fine to eat now. They just taste a little bit better the longer they sit. So have fun, enjoy your pickles, eat them on sandwiches, eat them with roast chicken, eat them with your next barbecue, put them on your tortilla, put them on some rice, all really great things for your pickled peppers. And enjoy. Thank you so much for joining me and enjoy. Bye.